tonight's a little bit different for some of the folks who regularly attend the monthly meeting. My name is Diane Cece, and I'm the board president. And then just for the agenda tonight, we normally do a bunch of city announcements, but basically we're focusing on this Gregory Blvd area roundabout and road redesign. So one announcement we want to make is, in particular, is that a couple of nights from now on Thursday night, a number of the council members are hosting a community discussion related to this topic as well. Some of them are online, and I'll let them speak more about it. I'll also bring up the flyer again to give you the information. And this could be a little bit confusing, but this one is at the Marvin Senior Housing on Gregory Blvd, where our meetings used to be, and where some of you attended the mayor's meeting recently. And I imagine that will be in the community center, the back room, the gym that we use. Unless they tell us differently, and that is at 6:30. And then for the official meetings for the city this week, we refer you to the city's website calendar to get the official information. I do think there's something on planning and zoning that we need to be aware of. I'm going to double check that tonight and tomorrow, but it's not a public hearing, just something that we may want to reach out to with comments. And if that's the case, I'll post something tomorrow. And then the other big thing to keep in mind, depending how things go, I guess in the next week or so, would be the June 22nd public forum that's being hosted by the city's Transportation, Mobility, and Parking Department, alongside the contracted engineering consultant VHB, where they intend to present the full project plan and design work for this project as a community forum. And that was intended to be really the first time that the public would have an opportunity to see this and to weigh in on it and to provide feedback. I'm going to talk in just a moment, though, about why the push was to actually work with the council and the mayor and TMP to see if they would postpone actually funding that work in the absence of most residents knowing nothing about it. I'll talk about that in a second. We don't have guest speakers tonight, but we do have several of our council members here who are here to listen to you, to provide information, and really just to have an open dialogue and give and take. There's still some current business stuff. I'm not going to go into it now, but we're looking to get another update on 274 East Avenue. The latest we heard was mid-May, and now we're in mid-May again. So we're still trying to see if that's getting much closer to being open. That's the former Rite Aid. And also, just to remind people, the development that we posted for 274 East Avenue, which is 3 double townhouse units that are going on a small parcel. That's the thing that I think is on planning and zoning this week. It's going in as a site plan review. And just to refresh your memory, with a site plan review, there's no required public hearing. A site plan review that meets all zoning regulations is almost an automatic approval. There's no legal recourse for our zoning commission to deny a site plan review. And we'll follow that as it goes, but it may be as soon as this Wednesday. And then the watch list, of course, is Penny's Diner and potentially Mike's Deli, only because we think that there's some feelers out there on whether or not that may ultimately come up for sale. And I'm only posting it here because it's public information if you look at commercial real estate posting, so you would see it yourself. Okay, so for tonight, pardon me, vodka. For Gregory Blvd, Marvin, Ludlow, Pasture Road roundabouts and road configurations. I want to remind people this project appears to be significantly larger than just the potential for a roundabout. Some of the housekeeping and courtesy rules for tonight as we go through this. I want to remind people that it's not ENNA's responsibility to actually present plans to the community. That falls back to city staff and the folks that they engage to actually present those plans. What we've been doing is simply passing along the documents, drawings, whatever information we can get. I know there was a bit of a brouhaha a week or so ago when we ended up publishing some AI generated versions of what could be considered there from the limited information we had. We thought we made it pretty clear that these were AI generated and only our possible interpretation based on the information that we had. And interestingly enough, two of those look very similar to what actually could be happening there. Feedback should be submitted to your elected and appointed city officials. A lot of people will be posting their feedback on social media. To the council folks, we all know that you all read it, but that's not actually the official communication into the city. And the communication that comes into us, unless we're drawing it and then trying to forward it on to the city, it just doesn't work that way. The only other thing that we do in that case is a petition, and we're just not at that point now, and we don't know if we'll get to that point. So we do suggest that you send your feedback, the official feedback, into the city officials via email. And there's also an actual feedback form that the Transportation, Mobility, and Parking is posted on their website under this project that you can fill out. And it's kind of, they actually open up by saying they're looking for your feedback on the plan. But it all brought us back to the same question of like, what exactly is the plan? So it's a little hard to, like, what are you giving feedback on? But nonetheless, if you're inclined, we encourage you to take advantage of every opportunity you provide to provide feedback. And the feedback can also be in the form of suggestions and questions as well. As you guys know, this meeting is being recorded. We do post it later in the week on we have a YouTube channel for ENNA. And so people can go there and watch it. We normally post on Facebook when we know that it's up and running. And so council members and city staff can also view it there if they miss this and they want to hear the actual dialogue. For tonight's discussion, it should focus primarily on the matter that we have at hand, because this is the urgent matter. And that relates to whether the city should move ahead next week, because they postponed the vote on this for a couple weeks. And I think it's next week, but one of the council people can correct me, either next week or at their first June meeting, whether or not they would then take up a vote to approve the $246,000 funding that would allow VHB Engineering to actually create the road designs, engineering the infrastructure projects that include stuff like the road design, curbage, curb cuts, parking, drainage, all the things related with infrastructure, and then things related to road markings, lighting, signage, etc. And then what would happen is then VHB would then conduct the public outreach and the feedback sessions. A portion of that $246,000 is what covers them actually doing that public engagement work. And just keep that in mind for a second, because that's important in 2 points coming up. If the council, if it gets that far and then it gets back on the table, back on the council agenda, and the council votes it down in terms of funding it, essentially, I think the project stops there. But then because this was grant funded specifically for this project in line with infrastructure and traffic safety, I think we'd also need to know, what would happen to the funding then, because it was accepted for the roundabout road design. And also, what you may not have noticed, is part of that road design is directly linked to a commitment to finish up some of the connections for the Norwalk River Valley Trail, which goes from Pasture Beach to Danbury, I think. If the council were to vote yes to fund it, then of course this would move forward. There would be that targeted June date for VHB to come back with all this information. But the 246 is only for all that design and engineering and public outreach work. This actual project is estimated to be, I think it's $3.5 million or $4 million. And if it was to be funded, then the city would still need to find significant funding to actually put the project through. And once it is funded, the project either gets built or the funding ends up being an engineering study that was done and kind of a waste of money because then it just sits there if it's not intended to be done. As an alternative, I don't know if this is possible. One alternative that we thought of was possibly then to only provide a very small amount of funding to VHB to update what they originally provided to the city in 2021. And I'm going to show you that drawing in a moment. And what that might do is get it enough of a plan that it would be in a format that could be presented to the public in a way that we can visually understand it, what the scope is, and to look at it. But then, rather than engage THB to do all the engineering and all the public outreach, what we then could do is have city staff, the transportation, mobility, and parking people, maybe in conjunction with DPW even, for them to conduct the public outreach and feedback. One, that would be infinitely less expensive, and two, it would be before any of the full design and engineering got funded, which is the whole other chunk of the 246. I hope that makes sense. It's super, super complicated, the way these things move forward. But I just kind of wanted to throw that out there because in 2021, there was a $11,000 funding for VHB to do an initial design. And I think that there's enough there that they could simply tweak that and we could save some money and maybe we could save some stress and angst and aggravation and frustration, which is always a good goal. Okay, if no one has an immediate pressing question here, let me go to the next slide. Okay, so I just wanted to bring this up so we have the details, and I want to thank council members. You can raise your hands there so people see you. Jesse Buckalow is on, Nicole Eady and Ann Wennerstrand, who are our two elected in-district representatives for East Norwalk. Council President Josh Goldstein and Council Majority Leader, I think Jalen is on.
Jalen's actually not on tonight.
He's not on. Okay. The other big meeting, just in case it does happen, I just want everyone to have this on their radar screen, and please put it into your calendars now. If it does get canceled for any number of reasons, either the project is killed off or something gets extended to push this out. But for right now, please pencil in Monday, June 22nd. They did schedule this around so it doesn't conflict with our own meetings and some other meetings. It'll be at 6 to 7:30. And this one is actually at Marvin Elementary School, not to be confused with Marvin Housing. So this is actually Marvin School on Pasture Beach Road. And actually what you see here, I'll come back to this, but this is the actual city's official rendering that was provided in terms of just highlighting the area that's going to be impacted there. Okay, and then just a little bit of courtesy, how we run our meetings before we jump in and start talking to folks. All of the community meetings that we have are open to the public. We're not required to have these meetings. ENNA has always done it as kind of a public service to give people an opportunity to come in and talk to us, for us to talk to them, and just to share things among the community. But we open it to all the community. You don't have to be in East Norwalk. However, during the discussions, we do ask that people who live in 06855, which is our actual neighborhood formal territory or geography, that we do give them priority in the discussion for Q&A first. And then anyone else from outside of the community, we're happy to open up to other stakeholders and other residents. We also ask that you please refrain from asking second questions or coming in with additional comments until we've had an opportunity to hear from everyone once, just to be fair. And I'll try to keep things moving along as best I can so that we hear from as many people as possible. Okay, I can bring these back up again and maybe even do a split screen, but just to remind folks, Last week, we were finally able to get what the city used as a rendering of the project scope when they applied for the grant to get the funding to begin with. And what they provided us is really two things that you see here, what they're calling the project limits. And that's where you see the geographic area that's outlined in red on this graphic. And also you can see what they're proposing that VHB take as a concept for when they go to do the design and engineering. And that is Fifth Street, Gregory, coming into Marvin, Pasture Beach, and then the access area that's around Ludlow. This is the one that you've heard us refer to, and you see in our emails and you see on social media that we refer to as a potential peanut design of a roundabout. And then you can notice it. I'm not sure if I'm able to zoom in, but this is why we need the city to present the plan to us. You'll also see that there's road redesigns that happen at Pasture Beach and at Gregory Blvd. And then as part of the Norwalk River Valley Trail, also major modifications that happen to Fifth Street in terms of traffic calming and better opportunities for pedestrian and biking as well. And that continues all the way down to the beach. Okay, so that is the version and the only portion of it that we've seen that was provided through the grant application. But by the way, that actually starts with funding that comes from the federal government under these programs. That was Congressman Jim Himes who approved that, and all federal funding comes through the state. You may not know that, but it has to come through the state. That comes through committees at the state in terms of grant funding, and that came through Senator Bob Duff's approval coming from his office into the city. Okay, so now, because we knew that this thing went back to 2021 and was really kind of under the radar after that, we knew that something had to have been done working with VHB because there was that funding of $10,600 to do the original scope. And so late last week, TMP provided us with the June 3rd agenda and minutes from the Common Council's Planning Committee. And just so you know, the Planning Committee is now called the Economic Community and Development Committee. So when you're searching for documents, anything prior to 2021, I think it is, or a certain date, you have to look under the Planning Committee to find this. But they did provide us with that full agenda. The portion of that relates to the funding of this project back then is a number of pages, but mostly pages 109 through 117. Those were posted in our weekend newsletter. So you can go and take a look at those yourself. But it concluded with, in addition to defining the scope and everything, it concluded with the attachment that then became the concept in 2021 for what the plan would be. And it's in that document as attachment B. And in this one, you can see a little bit more better definition of what could potentially happen with the road for Fifth Street, Marvin, Pasture. And there's really not a legend here either, by the way, so it's hard to really kind of discern what they're talking about here. But when they use terms like road diet, that's a term that's commonly used to kind of reduce the width of lanes, which in itself then encourages slower speeds and people being more alert. And it's a traffic calming tool that's in the toolbox that's commonly used. And they reference that here for Pasture. But the thing that you see that's different here as well is that in addition to the peanut design that you still see in the 2026 version, and some of the modifications that you see with lane changes and road changes coming into Gregory, is that you see the second part of what we suspected, which is a traditional roundabout at Marvin. Okay, so hopefully that's clear. And I know that there was one document that was produced where they said, TMP had said that the version that subsequently went in the grant funding and to VHB went in without some of these major changes, only because they thought it would be kind of either overwhelming or shocking for the community to see what the full scope would be. Part of the discussion tonight, and I really hope our council people can sink their teeth into getting information on this, and we've already heard from people. The first question is this the ultimate plan? And really the thing is being phased in based on funding availability and what the community will tolerate there. Okay, so having said that, let me stop share here. Sorry that took a little bit to get through. I just want to make sure everyone is on the same page. And also, I know that there are folks on here who probably have the link, but it didn't come from our newsletter because it was shared or you don't normally get the newsletter. But I just want to remind you to sign up for that because that's where we post our documents in addition to posting them on social media. We don't have a lot of volunteers, and we have a barely board. So it's hard for us to keep up with our website, unfortunately. So we do rely on social media and the weekly emails to be able to get information out. And so you can find the documents and the graphics and everything we've posted there. And if you just recently signed up, I think I saw a flurry of signups in the past day or two there. So if you missed it, I'll try to backtrack and get you what the last couple of emails that went out. Okay, so with that, ENNA would like to hear, your fellow residents and businesses would like to hear, and the council folks who were kind enough to hop on tonight ahead of Thursday's meeting would like to hear. And we just really want to open it up for a discussion for, questions, concerns, comments, bearing in mind that unless there's someone from the city who's on here tonight that has specifics with the details, we're probably not going to be able to answer them, but we certainly can review this and get stuff into the city. But we encourage you to contact the city as well so that they're hearing directly from residents. Okay, I'm not sure. So at this time, you can go ahead and raise your hand if you want to speak, or if you're on the phone, you can use the *9 to raise your hand. Charles, I'm not asking for help, but I'm not seeing any hands raised.
I'm not as well.
Okay. That is a little strange. We normally have a pretty vocal group here.
My screen is not showing a way to raise your hand. Usually you find it on the bottom.
Yeah,
so maybe there's
mine.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm seeing it underneath if you click react, and then there's a raise hand button is what I'm seeing.
Yeah, it's a little bit different depending on what version you're on. So it's either on the bottom. I mean, you just need to click somewhere down there and it will pop up. Or if you have a box at the top and you click react or more, you may have a plus sign that says more. And then that would bring it up as well. But otherwise, just wave at us. And Miss Bono, then if you wanted to go first, if not, we'll go, I think, to Alex. But okay. Okay, I see Alex now.
Well, thank you, Dan. I just wanted to first thank our council members for voting to postpone the project. I think that was a good decision, not because people here are not concerned about traffic safety or on 5th Street or about the roundabout, but because we had very little information. And I think the graphs and charts that have been shown tonight show that there was more information available than was suggested by some of the participants last at the council meeting of the during the committee. I also want to say I think there was no reason why the committee couldn't have taken the same decision that the whole council took, because I don't think there was much new information that was brought. So the earlier these things can be addressed, the better off we all are, because the longer they go on, the more difficult it is to make changes. And with that being said, I just want to remind people there really are two parts of the project here. One is the roundabout or roundabouts, and the second is Fifth Street. And while the roundabouts have gotten most of the attention, the changes to Fifth Street are more dramatic even than the roundabouts in a functionality context. And that's why I'm going to volunteer, Diane, if I can, to yield to my expert spouse, Betty, to talk about Fifth Street. Thank you.
I actually would very much appreciate that, because I think people are not aware of that, and the focus on the roundabouts is taken away from it. I'll be quite honest, I'm not quite sure I'm clearing it myself, so I really would appreciate that. Thank you, Betty.
Yeah, when I got the documents, particularly the VHB client authorization that contains all of the terms of the amendment to the contract, which is what is on the council agenda. And I looked at the section that calls for what they're going to, the design concepts they're going to produce for Fifth Street. There are two alternatives. Both of the alternatives call for removing half of the on-street parking on Fifth Street, half of it. And Fifth Street, as I'm sure you know, has single-family homes. It has multifamily homes. There are many driveways, but not a lot of space. There are only 13 garages. The two plans that are there call for either removing all of the on-street parking on the south side of the street, or to do a chicane with a little bit of parking on the north side, then a little bit on the south side, then a little bit on the north side, then a little bit on the south side. Both of those plans call for taking away half of the on-street parking. I think that would be a huge mistake, because it puts a real burden on seniors who may not be able to park in front of their homes to get in, their groceries. People with small children, there's some right across the street. I see them all the time. They need to park in front of the home so they can get the kids out onto the porch, get the groceries out. If they can't park in front of their home, they're going to be required to cross the street, maybe not even get a space across the street. And in addition, both of the two plans that are in the contract call for putting a 10-foot path, that's all the description that's in the VHB document, a 10-foot path. And then if you look at the document that was produced by the TMP, it says a shared path, and that seems to be related to the Norwalk River Valley Trail. So and then they talk about a 4-foot amenity zone. Now I went out there and, I couldn't accurately measure the whole thing, but like, where are the sidewalks supposed to go? If there's going to be, take away a line of parking, maybe you get your 10-foot path, although the parking spaces are not 10 foot wide. But then you've got like 6.5 feet on one side and 7 feet on the other that has the current sidewalk. So what about this 4-foot amenity zone? And is the path supposed to be in place of the sidewalk? You just have like an extra 10-foot wide sidewalk. And there's no other plan for Fifth Street that's in the VHB document. And it's been a long time since I practiced law, but when I practiced law, I don't think contract law has changed. And what gets done is what's in the contract, not what people would like to see, or maybe will listen to people. We're not going to get any other plans other than those two. And I think they're both seriously flawed. I did a memo. I can circulate it to anybody that would like to see it. Talking about there are numerous safety problems, I think, with that plan. hardships that will fall on seniors, people with small children, people that have disabilities. And I just think it would be disastrous to spend money on that kind of plan and to make that kind of dramatic change to Fifth Street. As I was working on the memo, it was on Sunday afternoon, beautiful day. I walked out. Okay, Sunday afternoon, there's no big events, that bring people into East Norwalk. There was no road race. There was no Oyster Festival. But who's parked on the street on this beautiful Sunday afternoon? It's going to be the residents. So I counted 29 cars parked on both sides of the street. If half the parking is gone, the other half is not going to fit those 29 cars. So that means, if you're, I'm an old person. I don't want to walk 2 blocks parked somewhere else to get home and to carry my groceries. So I'm all in favor of safety. I'm all in favor. And we have to do something about the speeding. But this solution is going to cause a different, just as bad series of safety issues. Also, some of the research I've done shows that removing on-street parking has a negative impact of up to 10% on your property values. So factor that in as well. So that's my pitch about Fifth Street. I think what's in the VHB amendment would be a disaster.
Thank you so much. You did get that to me today, which was a horrendous work day. Your memo that recaps that, and I will post it through ENNA and then share it with anyone that I didn't see there. I think those are some excellent points, like people to keep in mind, is that sometimes when we're looking to solve one problem or enhance one amenity, like kind of the collateral damage or unforeseen circumstances, then we end up shifting and making another problem. And this is an example, because what ends up happening is we just saw it on Howard Avenue in a different form, but the parking goes away, but the cars don't go away, and the need for parking doesn't go away. And there needs to be a balance between the desire to have walkable, bikeable, portions of the roads that are the ones that would be most likely to be used. And I know that there is a desire to have that be the path for the Norwalk River Valley Trail continuation as well. I can say, though, that when you talk about the shared sidewalk and amenity, we actually saw that concept as a portion of complete street for Seaview Avenue. And when they say shared, what they intend is that it's a wider like sidewalk area, like 10 feet, but it's intended to accommodate walkers, strollers, bikers, to be able to share that. And then the amenity space is literally what it is, like for amenities for like either vendors or activities, or when things are going on in the community, that you could have amenity space there. How that relates to Fifth is a little bit confusing, but I think those are good points, and not just for people needing the parking, especially the groups you made, but then we have this whole issue then with we don't do snow removal, we do snow pushing, and that brings on other issue there. But thanks for sharing the details on that, because we don't want people just to focus on just that roundabout part. This is a bigger thing, and if we shift the parking from there over to somebody else's street, it just creates a bigger problem there. Thank you so much. Okay, we have let me see here through the boxes. Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands up. I'll take a look in chat. Why is everybody being so very quiet tonight in this?
Okay, Thomas has his hand up.
Okay, let's see here. I think yeah, Thomas, I don't know if you're East Norwalk or not, but I'm not seeing any of the other folks. So go ahead, please.
Yeah, so I'm not within 06855. I actually live up very close to the town green. But uh, we exchanged emails a little bit, Diane, and I thank you for saying I was welcome to join. I am going to stay away from Fifth Street a little bit because I don't really know very much about that or the plans. I'll just, full disclosure, I'm on the leadership team on Sustainable Streets. I started my first email to Diane with an apology for our email that went out last week. And I want to start once again saying the same thing to y'all. That was too far. We had a member of leadership that jumped the gun a little bit there, and unfortunately, I was overwhelmed with my own wedding and the aftermath of that to be the sort of calming voice that I usually like to be when some of the excitable guys get excitable. So I guess with that said, Diane, if you don't mind if I share my screen for a second, I prepared something that'll take about 5 minutes, just about what I was emailing you about, if that's okay.
Okay, I think you can share now, Thomas.
Okay, yeah,
Did
I
it
should
come
be
up?
able to. There we go. And allow. Now y'all should be able to see. So I'm
It's coming
gonna.
up still. Hang on one second.
Y'all aren't able to
There
see
you go.
yet?
Yeah, okay, we got it now. Okay.
Okay. So I'm gonna skip this intro slide real quick. I've already kind of covered that. I kind of see us, ENNA and SSN, as having some common ground here. We both have our own frustrations with some of the communication with City Hall and TMP sometimes. We both really only want good projects to move forward. Y'all want to protect the neighborhood, and we want to protect public faith in safety projects. Because there's a project that damages the public faith in safety is worse than no project at all, frankly. And we also want the public to have a seat at the table before things are set or too expensive to change. So I'm going to skip the next two slides because y'all have already covered that content. But basically, what I want to propose here is that we essentially try it out before we spend a whole bunch of money on concrete and permanent infrastructure. So you can do temporary low-cost tests with like cones all the way up to some of the more advanced things you see with flex posts and whatnot. I would tend to lean towards cones. This sort of helps the public get a really complete picture of what's possible, or as much of a picture as possible of what's being planned with real life experience. Because like you see these drawings, and it's not always easy to visualize what that's going to look like on the ground. And you get to avoid expensive mistakes that you only discover after construction. And as you've pointed out, that 246K design budget seems pretty high for what they're proposing. I think we might be able to squeeze something like this in. So again, I'm focusing on roundabouts here. People have done similar things around the region. This is Pittsfield, Mass. This was their first ever roundabout. Fairfield, a year or two ago, did a similar sort of thing. This is a smaller one than probably what we'd be looking at. Bedford, Illinois, a similar sort of thing, but a little bit higher order. This is one where I couldn't find the location of the photo, but a very simple, just cones and keep right signs. Tonawanda, New York. And so how this could look at this location, basically, if you cone off some of these areas, you can create the shapes and the lanes that would otherwise be created by concrete in this project. And I think that this would be good so that we can basically have TMP, prove that their design that they want us to do is actually going to work well before we spend millions of dollars on it. So that's really my pitch. I just want to say, thank you for the time. And we would love to work with y'all to ask for a trial for this. I just kind of threw in 30 days. It doesn't have to be 30 days. Could be more, could be less. But yeah, and I also want to emphasize that, like, we saw in South Norwalk, we did a pilot project. It didn't end up being kept. And I want to say that, like, even if a project doesn't go forward after one of these tests, that's still a success, right? It means that we didn't waste millions of dollars doing hard construction, right? And so, yeah, I guess that's all that I have to say. Thank you all for the time. I appreciate it.
Thanks for sharing that. And I do think that it's something that, ENNA would look to be, collaborative with any group that has is a stakeholder in what ultimately gets done here. I'm under the impression, though, and someone else on here maybe can correct me, that there was a bit of a trial, for lack of a better term, that actually was done fairly recently in terms of adjusting the pattern there at the roundabout, and then went back to the drawing board. Is there anyone on here who recalls? I think it was just the road markings and maybe cones. Is there anyone on that? And Thomas, if you want to take that down, I'll bring up the thanks.
Yeah, I'm not aware of what you're referring to. You mentioned it in the email as well. I did find an old committee meeting that mentioned that they changed some stop signs to yields without proper approval and were told to change them back back in 2021, but I wasn't able to find any more than that.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. And I think that was, and I wasn't sure if something happened since 2021, but I know that they tried something. It was an immediate kind of outrage and failure. And then they pulled back on that. I don't know what the community sentiment is on trying this out. I know that that huge project that they did in Massachusetts, the Worcester, Mass, at the 5 intersection point. Actually, VHP was the consultant and the contractor for that. The only way they could manage that is by doing a bunch of testing under all different conditions and trying to replicate different times of year, because it was also an intersection that had to do with the Boston Red Sox stadium. So that required a lot of engineering. I'm not sure what that would take to do is kind of a test. And I'll open that up if people have some comments on that. But I also do want to backtrack a little bit to say that a lot of the discussions on this started with a sentiment that I heard almost everybody saying and echoing, is this really a solution that's looking for a problem? Because part of the missing data is just kind of these raw numbers thrown out on hard braking accidents. And when we tried to dig a little bit deeper to kind of get the facts and data, like give us the actual raw data that supports us, give us the customer service calls and records that you have. We don't actually have that yet. And the response then became, well, this could be accident prone and be a safety issue. And that's what we're looking to prevent. So I think we're also trying to balance is it, again, the mentality of, is this a solution looking for a problem? And worse, is this just somebody's pet, project that says, hey, let's try this over at Gregory Boulevard and see how this flies. Because I know that there's been, people that are proponents of just trying to get roundabouts everywhere. I'll throw it out there too. I would just say, so people know, because I've shared this with a lot of people, I am personally a major proponent of roundabouts. They've been around for a long time. They serve a very good purpose, but in the right place and for the right reasons. So I'm not convinced, and conversely, somebody'd have to do a hard sell. But and I know that I've heard from a lot of people, and our council people, you saw in letters too that came to you that specifically said people are not against bikes and pedestrians and safety, and they're not opposed to roundabouts. But just here didn't make good sense. So do we have some comments on that or feedback on? I also want to hear from people that we also heard from in emails, and I think you council folks heard from, that said, look, spend the money, spend the 246, because otherwise we're not going to know. But then the backside of that is, if we spend the 246, just like Alex Knopf was telling you, the further this thing gets along, the harder it is to stop. There's just not going to be the political will to then just say we're going to pull back after having spent $246,000 on it. But are there folks that are on that feel strongly about spending the money to get the whole kit and caboodle out here in front of us, and then taking our chances on what happens after that? This has got to be the quietest ENNA group. Maybe there's more in chat here. Let me see, and we can bring this up here. Okay, we have a comment that says it's not a traditional traffic circle, but it works. I'm not sure if that's in response to the peanut one there at that side. Let me just go back.
It looks like you've got someone who's trying to raise their hand.
Yeah. And also, just before I leave the chat, also from David, the road diet on Pasture would be welcome. I'm never quite sure why we've never done wider sidewalks, so you can't really even work two abreast with somebody, falling off the sidewalk. Okay, who do we have?
I think Mr. Anderson would like to speak.
Okay, and you can unmute. I think you can unmute now, Jim.
Thank you. I only did it 4 times. I'll try not to be the excitable type that Thomas brought up. If I can control my temper, I'll give it my best effort. I'm actually way opposed to this. I don't see any logic to it. I was at Nick's place just yesterday, talked to the owner about it. He is definitely against it. The timing of it, when it will happen, he just opened up, as most of us know, some of us know. I'm trying to work to a question. I know you want to keep it to one question, but I have a lot more than just one. And thank you, Thomas, for that idea, by the way. I love that idea with the temporary setup. And again, thank you, Betty, for your insight and reviewing. I'm just appalled that no one in the city did what you did. I'm pretty upset about that. I would like to see a traffic study done on East Avenue. I've been a victim of 3 separate times of a wrong way on East Avenue, of cars going the wrong way into me. I know it's happened many a times. The screen just went blank. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. There you are. Okay. So a wrant way on East Avenue, Frank from Sweet Ashley's can contest to that people actually make a left on Van Zant and the other street that's on the other side of the church. And also, and this is a common thing, and maybe once, if East Avenue is ever finished in the career that it should be called, Easton Winfield and Easton Finch, where you go into 2 and then into 1 and people cut across and whatever. That's a constant bottleneck, constant accidents. Why picking this? I haven't been sold on it yet, I'll be honest with you, Diane. And looking at the hard braking turn, that's just ridiculous. That doesn't give me enough ammunition to go with this, even to think about it. I think for now, that's about it. I'll probably have more questions later. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. That was a common theme, too, in the correspondence that came to ENNA and the council and the mayor, was that folks were thinking about a lot of other places where this money could be better spent. Grant money is a little bit different than operating in capital in the city, though, unfortunately, because it's specific for the application that went in, or a transfer can be done under certain conditions, probably a whole bunch of paperwork, but it has to be something related. And if it really is related to traffic calming, which I think it went in under despite the grant actually I think being part of NRVT, then there is a whole host of other areas that I think could be supported by it. And that's one of the questions that we have if this thing gets voted down beforehand. Just how difficult would it be to shift that? And if we could shift it, where would be the best spots to shift it to? In general, this is not unique to Norwalk, but all municipalities are just loath to turn away grant money. And once the grant money has been approved to take, our council actually has to approve that they're going to accept the grant money. And that's what you folks did, I think, in March or April, I think. Okay, thanks, March. I see you saying that. Thanks, Ann. Yep. So once they actually approve that, that money is ours. And to turn away something that may have been something that we're entitled to is bad. But once you get the money, I know people don't really want to do that. But that in itself is not any reason to continue with something that may be a bad idea, especially when it may be better spent somewhere else. That's an excellent point, Jim.
Good, thank you.
Someone's hand was just up and now I don't see it now. Go to the screen here. Okay. Either raise your hand or if you're having trouble with that, but you can go ahead and unmute yourself and we'll get you on here. I know that folks are probably going to be attending Thursday night, but we really want to hear from people tonight on this. So,
Diane, I think it's the difficulty. I think I'm still unmuted. There's a button, at least on mine, where it says react.
Right.
You have to hit that button,
right,
and then there's a little hand thing that goes up. So there might be some people that don't know that.
Yep. So if you're trying to get your hand up there, hit the react icon there, and then that will bring up the option there. Or just go ahead and unmute yourself. Okay. I think the other thing that we were just talking about in terms of timing with any of this stuff happening, and again, the council people can correct me if I'm wrong, but when we in the council were kind of pressing staff to say, is there any timing is of the essence issue here? I'm not sure we got a straight answer on that, but the impression I got is that there's not a use it or lose it by a certain date that anyone could define. They were supposed to go back and look that up, I think, and respond to the council, but I don't know if they did. And the other thing would be whether or not there's some commitment to VHB that would have told them that we were committing to it then, because, they have to provide for staff and everything. Or if it has something to do with the fiscal year, when it could go, when the funding would actually roll over to, I'm not sure. So that's one question that we have.
May I just jump in for a second?
Hi, Josh. Yeah, please help.
So just a couple things, because I thought that was a good question that came out of the discussion last week. And I know that TMP went back and I spoke with them. I think a number of us spoke with them afterwards just to get some more information. And basically, here's the grant funding that's on the table right now, which is a $400,000 grant for all of the design and engineering work. That's a state grant. Those grants usually, and I don't remember exactly what the thing is for state grants, but they last for a certain period of time. And if you don't use it, technically it goes back into sort of the state's general fund. But what it really means, typically in practice, is that another municipality is going to get access to that particular grant money. It's not, you're not saving money on your taxes. Is generally that someone else is just going to get access to that particular grant funding. Then there is another grant that was mentioned, which was $850,000 in a federal grant. And that we confirmed with Congressman Himes' office, there's a 4-year window to use it. Now, there's a lot of run-up for a project like this. So 4 years, you think, oh man, 4 years is an eternity. And that may not necessarily be the case. However, there is sort of a 4-year use it or lose it string attached to that particular grant.
In terms of and you're sorry, I'm sorry, I did get confused between the portion that was the Jim Heim. And by the way, the 850,000 grant is just a portion. Then city would still have to then come up with the funding for the rest of it.
Or if the city were to move forward with the project at obviously if the council were to authorize some version of this project getting authorized, getting some version of this project, there would also be a discussion of whether it could get additional grant funding to cover the full cost of the project.
Right. So, and if it did go forward, though, I know that it was mentioned that it would ultimately then, there could be funding that would ultimately be needed from the city, which would be in our budget.
Certainly possible. A lot of times with grants, from the state, either it's a fully funding or it's a mostly fund where the city kicks in a percentage of it. I'm not trying to be evasive, but I just can't speak to how, if this were to go forward, what the funding structure would look like. But like, for example, like for our schools, there's a reimbursement rate. So like for Newark High School, well, the typical school reimbursement rate now that we have for the next 25 years is that the state pays for 65% and the city pays for the remaining 35. With Newark High School, it's 80-20. So, so that is typical of that kind of project. But for a lot of these kind of traffic and improvement projects, a lot of them have been 100% grant funded.
And in the absence of knowing that, so what happens then is that once you get into the project, if the funding's not there, then there's really kind of no way to backtrack, and then it does fall. You have to get the money, right? So at that point,
I think we're kind of dealing in a bit of a extended hypothetical, but yeah, I mean, ultimately, the idea is to budget for the project as best you can, and usually the idea is to hit a target that's reasonable and try and manage the costs so that you don't have to keep applying for and asking for additional funding. And with these kind of projects, are to their credit, TMP's actually done a very good job of securing, over time, it's been a considerable amount of money in grant funding, and they're managing, I think, something in the neighborhood of $60 to $70 million in grant funded projects right now.
Okay, thank you. Someone else just had their hand up.
I see Mayor Knopp has his hand up.
Yep, let me just see. Hang on just a second, Alex. Let me just see if the other person's hand is still up here. Which I'm not seeing now. I think it was Willow, but we'll come back to Alex and then come back to anybody who has their hand up. Go ahead, Alex.
Thank you. So just to kind of add on and maybe modify a bit of what Josh just said, at least for the state money, the money doesn't go back into the general fund. What happens is these are bond funds. So the project gets approved, and then when the project is ready to go forward, the State Bond Commission approves selling state bonds in order to raise that money. So the money we don't lose it. It just never gets sent to us. I don't think timing is an issue here. I think even the 4 years or whatever is sufficient time. And after all, these were all legislatively approved earmarks, and there's no reason why legislatively the time deadline couldn't be extended if it needed to be for an extra year or 18 months or something. These are the ways that the legislature works. But let's be clear, we're not talking about doing what's been recommended on paper yet or doing nothing. We're talking about seeing whether there are modifications that would make the benefits acceptable to the neighborhood. So in Fifth Street, there's always been a speeding problem. When I was mayor, we had slowdown days, and we had people write up signs and stand out because the beach traffic can be very disruptive, and loud motorcycles and so on. But there are things like it's been talked about on this plan and others, some kind of raised crosswalk at Hawkins and Fifth that might slow traffic down. That's very different than removing half of the parking. So let's not get into a situation in which it's either what's been proposed that's unsatisfactory or doing nothing. Let's try to find safety measures, at least for Fifth Street, that are acceptable to the neighborhood. And I think that's very doable. I don't think whether we extend the current 2-week delay for another 2 weeks, I don't think that would be a problem. And the way we got these funds was because of favors to a legislator, and there's no reason why an extension couldn't be another favor if needed. I don't think it will be needed. Let's work on some modifications that are acceptable and effective.
Yeah, I agree with that, because really what's put forward in that scope of work with VHB is not charging them with coming back with 2 or 3 alternatives for, to present to the public and get the feedback. The scope of work for VHB is exactly what you were seeing there. The only other question we had was is that just partial to what the other bigger plan is? But just focusing on this, it didn't seem like there's an opportunity in the scope as part of feedback to say, do you like A, B, or C more? Which is a lot of these projects. That's how they start. Is kind of an A, B, or C based on some stakeholder feedback internally with the city, and then they come out with that. Jim, you can unmute.
Okay, we have somebody who would like to speak.
Okay. Oh, so somebody who didn't speak yet. Charles, where's their hand here?
Yes.
Who is that? I'm not seeing them.
Just says user on my side.
Okay. For some reason, I'm not seeing that. But
that's Jim.
That's me.
Oh, it is Jim. Okay, go ahead. go ahead, Jim.
See, I'm waving my hand. I'm raising my hand.
Go ahead, Jim.
All right. Sorry about that, Charles. I thought it was you.
That's okay.
All right. So I'll ask one question. Who applied for who applied for this? You got to laugh. Who applied for the grant and why? I guess it was. I went to that meeting at the Marvin and first heard the term heartbreaking. Was it that? Was it accidents? I brought up the issues with the other different locations that money that should have been, or at least surveyed or studied, as opposed to this particular site. So the question was, who applied for the grant and why? What was the initial reason for this particular spot?
Good question. If Josh or any of the council people know the origin, we ENNA asked for the actual grant application. We only got a portion of it, like that image, but we didn't get the actual grant application. I know that it was tied to NVRT, but if one of you guys has the answer to that, I'd appreciate it.
So TMP applied for the grant. So the city, obviously, TMP is a department of the city. City applies for the grant. Why did they apply for the grant? I mean, I know this was something that was obviously, and I think Diane, this is something that's been, discussed and I think included in your materials, but this was something that was discussed obviously several years back at an economic and community development meeting before any of us who are on this call were on the council. It was, mentioned in the transportation master plan. I think Garrett did an explanation in the early part of the meeting on Tuesday, that kind of did the run up of that they had been hearing feedback, that this was something that they had an opportunity to apply for. And with grants, you just, you're applying and you're hoping you can get it. And you put together a good grant application and you kind of hope it works out. And so TMP did apply for that grant. And obviously the grant is in 2 parts, but the grant that we're talking about right now, that the one that the council, is on the council's agenda, is an application for $246,000 out of that $400,000 in the design and engineering state grant. Jim, I don't know if
Thank
that
you.
answers your
It,
question.
it absolutely does not, Josh. I'm sorry. I mean, I heard him. Maybe you or other people are not listening. I've only heard maybe a 1% that are for this project. 1% of present people that
No,
live.
I was asking if I answered your
No,
question.
you asked who, right? The answer
Can I,
why is I'm not sold on it.
Jim?
It's weak. It's weak. It's like asking, well, why do people like chocolate? I mean, it's stupid. I mean, it's heartbreaking. Give me a freaking break. Come on.
I think it's
Jim, can I, sorry, can I jump in, Diane? Sorry to
go ahead,
interrupt.
Jesse, please.
Sure. I just want to build on Josh's response. Jim, I'm not sure if you've visited the website that TMP put up for
No.
the page. So on the page, there's a ton of links to public feedback from the Transportation Master Plan, where you can see specific comments and the geolocation along Fifth Street, around the roundabout. So there is a lot of data there around kind of public comment and the need to make it safer and so forth. So happy to drop the link of the website in the chat, but I think that's a good place to get some more rationale
Okay.
around the why behind it.
I'm up for that. I mean, I take, for instance, what's going on with Sweet Ashley's. I mean, that's impacting his business, the construction. Losing 2 spaces in front of Sweet Ashley's. Now you have Nick's place. This is definitely going to impact his business. And he said it in his own words. I don't think he's on it now. And that's just a portion of it. That's the business section. The why, and maybe there is a rational reason why this is going through, or why it was picked, or why the grant was applied for. But again, people that live here know of the areas of Winfield and East Avenue, Winfield and Fitch. Emerson. Emerson's a mess. Emerson is an absolutely mess. Accidents happen, speeders, loud noises. This is a place that it looked like just was plucked out of the air.
And to be fair, Tim, I do want to say that this does go back to 2021
I
and
get
prior. Unfortunately, what ends up happening with these, and it just drives us nuts. When we say, like, how did anybody know about this? To be like, well, it was on our 2021 June 17th agenda, and it was listed as possible traffic improvements. I mean, no, this is not going to happen. And I even said in one of our communications that the March agenda this year got by my radar, and that's hard to do. These guys will tell you it's hard to start slipping by stuff over here. But I also think this is something, and Lisa, I'm going to get to you in just a second too, and Betty. Some of this also, I think, is part of a chicken or the egg thing when it comes to how these things work. So, like, was the real need to do this there, and then it was kind of, let's watch for when grant money could come, so that this isn't on the burden of. By the way, grant money doesn't come from Bill Gates or Pepsi. It's still, it's still taxpayer money. Okay, even if it's a state or federal. So is that really what it was? And then say, let's take an opportunity then. As we move towards design and to find some grant money? Or was this, here's a pot of grant money, what do you guys have sitting out there that maybe can fit into this umbrella of traffic calming and stuff? And I'm not sure if that's really clear. But 2 things really are clear is that regardless of what agendas this is on, when we first started talking about it, when it hit my radar screen and I was surprised, boy, oh boy, did we hear from people who said, this is absolutely the first time I'm hearing about it. And if I did see something about it in 2021, a lot of these things don't materialize. They're just thrown out there by staff, and they may be placeholders and they never come to be. And then fast forward, and then all of a sudden you're on a fast track now where this thing has got to be done by June. And I think that's part of what happened. That's part of what it caused the panic, honestly. Nicole and Ann know that. Because they watched it happening as that was happening. So let me get to Lisa, Roger, and then I can come back to Betty. We typically try to stop it at 8:30 if folks are willing to stay on, and there are people that have other comments or suggestions or questions. We can go a little bit later. Hi, Lisa.
Good evening. I would like to
Oop, you're back muted again. You're on mute, Lee. There you go.
Okay. I also like the idea that Thomas presented with trying something a little bit smaller first and seeing what works and what doesn't work versus just going ahead and full speed ahead. And I have two questions that I don't expect an answer to, but I have questions. And that is, we're using VHP for this study. Were there other vendors that, how were they selected? Were there other contractors that were under review as well? Was one more expensive than another? How did they come about VHB? And then what I would like to see is for this $246,000, a breakout, a little, not a 20-page term paper, but a one-page summary of $246,000, X amount for this item, just so that we can get a high level of what we're talking about. And then the same thing for the larger project as well.
Lisa, I
Thank
can
you.
actually answer both of those. The reason this didn't go out to bid is this is technically an addendum to an existing contract that the city has with VHB for design and engineering services. And under that scope, one of the council people can probably answer this, what the rest of the scope is. But when you have someone that you're already contracted with in general, where things may get added or moved around, the council and the mayor are allowed to do an amendment to an existing contract. Unless there's any pushback from staff or someone else that says this kind of falls outside of what that scope was and you should rebid it, then that's the typical process. Again, a council person, please correct me if I'm wrong. Okay. The second part of that is the breakout in the scope of work that's in this 246,000 and actually the 400. There is a one-page sheet that's there that does break out design, engineering, lighting, public engagement. It wasn't one of our emails, but it wasn't like it's a separate thing, a separate page that I pulled out. But I can pull that out so you'll see it. I can also post the 2021 same thing with the scope with the breakout that's smaller, the one that did the original funding for the first concept, so you can see what that was like, because they had two portions in that one. They had the 10,500 for design, and then they had another quote that would have taken it to what they call 90% of the design work. But I can post those. And
thank you. That would be helpful.
Okay. Yep, I will. And Nicole, Edie, were you about to correct me on that, or I got that straight? I saw you.
You're good.
We got it. Thank you. Yay! Okay, we have and Councilmember Wennerstrand has her hand up, and then I'll come back to Betty.
Thank you. I don't want to cut you off, Betty. And thank you. When I saw you the other night, I was able to thank you for such a thorough memo that you provided us, which was very, very helpful. I just wanted to take the opportunity to say thank you for having us here, Diane, and for such a meaningful conversation and the opportunity to really to really listen and hopefully be as responsive as we can. And I really urge everyone to also come on Thursday night, to continue, because this is super important, this conversation. A couple of things. Yes, you are correct. We are voting on an amendment to an existing contract. So that is correct. That is why we have the vendor VHB that we're going to be going with for this design, if we are able to get to this design and engineering phase. I wanted to also thank Diane for flagging the language on the city interactive, the form that the city provided for feedback from residents, which I hope that everyone has seen. There is a form on the TMP website that residents can provide, can ask questions, can provide feedback, And the feedback at this point is really on the concept and along the lines of everything we've been discussing tonight. The opportunity for feedback on hopefully multiple perspectives of designs will be on June 22nd. But that interactive form, Diane, you pointed out that it said to comment on the plan, which really it was a bit of a confusing way of the language on the form. So I think really what the city is looking for are folks to ask questions, to give feedback in advance of the next step here. So I urge everyone to do that.
And while I still have you and also the council president, when you tabled this, did you table it to a date certain, as you call it? Is it the 26th meeting, literally in the 2-week mark?
Yes. So when we tabled it
Yes.
for 2 weeks, it's the 26th. Yes.
So a week from tomorrow, the day after Memorial Day,
Correct.
unless it got tabled again, but it would be a thumbs up or thumbs down vote next Tuesday.
So what we did by tabling it 2 weeks, we tabled it to the agenda for our next meeting, which is the date that you just said.
Okay, but it could be tabled again, correct?
I mean, anything could be tabled, but
right.
Yes.
Okay, but otherwise the vote would kind of be a thumbs up or a thumbs down unless somebody raises an amendment on the floor to modify the agreement, like we were talking about, maybe cut it back. But I hope that doesn't happen because that really blocks the public from being engaged with that. So I don't know if you want to go back to TMP and see if they want to reconsider something. But I want to remind people again, and I'm not doing a scare tactic or fear mongering here, is if the council votes next Tuesday to approve this, then the $246,000 is approved. It's allowed to be allocated, and the contract goes forward. And then the only, the other opportunity then is what VHB is going to come back with in June. So, and with the holiday weekend in between, there's not a lot of time to get some answers that we still think we need and to have the dialogue. I'm grateful for Thursday. Betty, let me see if there's any. You're on mute, Betty. You're still muted. Sorry.
Sorry. Maybe I'm just echoing what other people have already said, but the issue I have is that the amendment as it now stands has only those two designs for Fifth Street. So if the amendment as it's written now is passed by the council, VHB is under absolutely no obligation to produce for that nice June 22nd meeting anything other than plans that remove half the parking on Fifth Street. Mm-hmm. So why are those only the two options, and why can't that VHB amendment be amended? Amend the amendment before it goes to a vote. Otherwise, we're in a box and we're going to be stuck fighting, well, I'm against the amendment as proposed. The second point I'd like to make is that not only do those two plans remove half the parking, they both include a 10-foot wide path, presumably because some of the funding was granted so that there could be an extension of the Norwalk River Valley Trail. Now, putting the Norwalk River Valley Trail, I mean, right now on the sidewalk, there are little markers. This is part of the Norwalk River Valley Trail. But putting that trail down Fifth Street is not going to require the same kind of thing as putting that trail in through Oyster Shell Park. It's a different environment. In Oyster Shell Park, you can have a 10-foot wide trail, or on other portions that you can have a 10-foot wide trail. But the implications of putting a 10-foot wide trail and saying, it's the Norwalk River Valley Trail, we need to have it 10 feet wide and have bicycle traffic in both directions because it's part of the trail. Well, why? I mean, it's a completely different environment. Has the trail gone along other residential streets where they've put in the 10-foot wide trail? Can you have the trail marked, have nice signage, have people know what it is, but not take away the parking and put this 10-foot wide sidewalk on the street. And I think that until the amendment is amended, it really puts people in a difficult position, because we're not going to get anything on June 22nd other than what's spelled out, and what's spelled out there are two very, in my opinion, very poor alternatives.
Thank you, Betty. That raises another really important point there, because same with the roundabouts and the road diet and the lane changes. This is what they're charged with. Then contractually, they're not coming back with anything else. In the absence of amending the amendment and being able for you guys to work with as our representatives to see if you can get that done, by not doing that really only reinforces this concept with the public that you've heard over and over again. By the time it sees the light of day, it's a done deal. And we can't say it enough. And this project really highlights that, especially because it's so clear what they're charged with coming back with. And there's not the ABC or the, all the other components of it. Then this is why people look at the stuff and go, it's a done deal. Now we're just checking the box. We're going through the motion, and they're pacifying us. So I think that's an excellent suggestion. I think it's something worthy to consider. And when you leave here tonight for this week, maybe bring that back, because there is no going back.
I'm so sorry. I forgot one other point, which is that if that 10-foot wide path is put on 5th Street, the path continues north on Cove. So is Cove next to have their parking removed, half of it removed, to continue that 10-foot wide path? And if it's not, then why do you have to do it on 5th Street? I mean, the path goes northward across on Cove and then up, across on 5th and then up Cove. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have to put a 10-foot wide path on Cove and take their parking, why are you doing it on 5th? And there has to be some other vision for the trail when it goes through a residential neighborhood. Sorry, I had forgotten to say that.
Yeah. And I want to add something to that too, just to give fair warning to the council, because I know I've told Ann and Nicole this all the time. It's not ENNA's style to ambush. We don't, that's not how we play the game. We don't do the aha and the ambush stuff. We may as well tell you now that the same conversation that we're having now for this area is definitely a conversation that's going to be, probably as important, and with as many people showing up and giving you feedback for Seaview Avenue complete streets. Because we're talking about the same type of thing where the same type of process was used. And in fact, it was based on the feedback that happened from the preliminary TMP review of complete streets for Seaview Avenue. I can say for myself, and I'll speak for Charles, who's on here too, that's in the area. We were quite frankly shocked to see that the original version that they came back with the consultant for Seaview Avenue is still the version that they're showing today on their site and in their documents. We're talking about losing important parking, shifting parking where it's going to impact people's views and vistas, taking away Mill River Park the way that it exists now. At the end of Mill River, Mill Pond, sorry, I'm thinking of Stanford, Mill Pond, where Mill Pond Park is, and shifting that over to provide parking for businesses, but shifting our park over to the other side to East Avenue. So you'll be looking across a little part of Mill Pond instead of, the view vista, which the park was intended for, to look up Mill River. But this really echoes, this is very, very similar. And just so that you folks are aware, because we saw that the original iteration of that is in that plan, the villagers are going to be coming out and talking about that too, which are probably going to happen very soon. Anyone else have any comments? I know the council folks know the sentiment of The first cut at this thing is just kill this. Nobody wants it. There's very few people that are interested in it from a safety point of view. There may be some safety concerns, but we think there's certainly alternatives that are less impactful, cost a lot less money, aren't going to add another infrastructure project after we've been under, complete bombardment from the city and state for these years. We have another 2 to 3 years of walk bridge, and if nothing else, it's going to be, a hit the pause button, like give us a break, and let's really step back and take a look at this. Okay, it is just about 8:30. We almost never end on time. This could be.
Okay,
I
Diane.
just wanted to thank you for allowing us to join you tonight.
Thank you, guys.
So we really appreciate the feedback. I put my email in the chat.
Thanks. Okay.
Have city emails. There's also just the citycouncil@norwalkct.gov email.
Right. Okay.
If there are questions that, if you and I know Betty, I have your memo. I read it this morning. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to respond to your email, but I did read it. If there are some questions we can try and get some answers to ahead of Thursday, and you want to shoot me an email, feel free. We'll do our best, because as Diane pointed out, we do have the holiday weekend coming up, but we also wanted to make sure that, we are, genuinely doing community outreach, and we thought doing a forum in East Norwalk is a good way to do that. But I just appreciate you guys taking the time, and my proverbial door is always open.
I just wanted to know that
appreciate that. Thanks.
My email is also in the chat, and please reach out, and please do, stay in touch. And thank you I just repeat what I said before. Thank you very much for having us. And I see Jesse and probably Nicole's in there too.
Thank you. But it looks like Mr. Jim has his hand up. I don't know if you want to.
Oh,
okay. Jim, go ahead.
Mr. Anderson, and you can call me Jim. I think the frustration, and I appreciate you council members being on here, is really the frustration of residents, and I don't want to keep reiterating what's been said, that something like this that affects East Norwalk, we've been through literally hell. East Avenue, the digging, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, the pumps, the senior home by Ludlow Center. I live around the corner from there. The accidents, the death that was on Van Buren in the wall. I mean, there are issues here going through the construction, going through Arden Point, I think it's called, formerly the Monstrosity. But it's just the lack of personal review that should be done by staff, paid staff, possibly by the council members. And yes, I'm looking at you, Ann. And I'm just finding out that you are my representative. The zoning committee, someone needs to go out. What Betty had brought up about 5th Street, it's totally ridiculous. Totally ridiculous. There are cars parked on both sides of Cove Street, both sides of 5th Street. Shrinking that down, it's not going to work. It does not harm traffic. Enforcement stops problems. There is lack of enforcement. The electric bikes, the speeders. I sat in Sweet Ashley's last night. Literally, it was a game of a crowd of people. Let's see how many people just blow right through the stop sign. No enforcement. And it's not even the summer yet. My personal fear is the electric bikes and mopeds. I'm a motorcyclist, and I see it firsthand. These kids do not observe any kind of road rules. It's going to happen. I can assure you. So that's my 2 cents. And now we're asked to fill out a form. And like Diane said, is it deaf ears? Is it just a piece of paper that's just going to be thrown to the side? All right, we gave the residents a chance. And then the frustration, and then people will ultimately just stop answering. They'll just keep posting on Facebook or yada, yada, yada. And it's just going to happen anyhow. Yeah. So I appreciate you guys coming to this meeting. I've spoken many times to Mayor Smith. I'm trying to give her an open mind. If you don't know, I'm a true Republican, but I'm open-minded. So, I'll fill out my form and I'll put my complaints in. And thank you for coming to this meeting. That's all.
And I think a lot of the frustration that you guys see is really just coming back from the community for just feeling like they were kind of blindsided by this. And I know that you got a ton of letters. I know you got a ton of emails because a lot of people copied us on it. And the sentiment from the people that lived there was overwhelmingly, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And it has functioned extremely well, in that format for a long, long time. And if there's some minor tweaking that can be done, like I said, with some striping or with some signage or with some lighting, that makes the pedestrian and bicycle aspect of it a little bit safer, I don't think anyone would be opposed to that. But it functions well. And let's not be, a solution looking for a problem there. All we can hope is that we can hit the pause button. And we're counting on you guys. And I know the four of you are here. We didn't break any FOI, I don't think here, right? With just you guys, right? So it was good. And I hope that you, take this to heart. And I do want to say too, just on a personal note, because all the stuff that people send in to you, I read it, but I also read all of the social media stuff. And I take that with a grain of salt and I consider the source, for sure. But when I read comments, like why bother? It's a dagger through my heart. As ENNA, I can't tell you how bad that is, and it should be just as bad for you folks when you're reading comment after comment after comment to say why bother. They don't listen to us. We can sign 5,000 people on a petition. We can call them. We can email them. We go to the forums. We fill out the forms. We do keynotes on boards, and I hope you have that same sentiment, that feel the same way I feel when you guys are reading those comments too. Please listen to the people here. Okay. Thank you.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. If you wanted to speak or send comments in, you can do the form and get right to the council people and the mayor as well, and us too. Folks that are always on here know traditionally we stop the recording and I stay on for a little bit just for people who are shy or want to talk about something that we didn't cover. I'm not going to do that tonight because I have a whole bunch of stuff now to do from here. But our email is info@eastnorwalk.org. That comes into me and another board member. And so please feel free or call me, text me, just get something in if there's something on your mind. And to be continued, we don't have a lot of time, so we'll see what happens this week with getting the information we're looking for, and also to see what happens on Thursday night. And I hope a lot of people can make it to Thursday night so we can all be in the same room and continue this.